Throughout the heaven and the earth, I alone am the honored one. The famous quote from chapter 75 of the Gojo past arc, where Gojo revealed himself to be the honored one. The original honored one, you can argue, is Sukuna, because he was the pinnacle of JiuJitsu strength back in the Heian era, but the story never mentioned him being an honored one level character, or just that title itself of being the honored one was never labeled for Sukuna. In chapter 199 of the Culling Games arc, Angel and Sukuna himself referred to Sukuna as the disgraced one in the official Viz translation, and I have seen other translations refer to him as the fallen one. Whichever version you read, it's the same context of Sukuna being the one to fall from goodness and into complete evil and darkness, hence the titles of the disgraced one and the fallen one. So because of this, I can't refer Sukuna as an honored one type character. He has the power level of an honored one level character, like Gojo, and to be fair, he is stronger than Gojo as he did defeat him, so the power level is not the issue. It's the whole whether or not he was labeled as an enlightened honored one, which is revealed that he was not. So in the story, Gojo, even though he said it about himself, the story calls Gojo as the first honored one in this story. Kashima was meant to be another generational JiuJitsu sorcerer back in the day, but he was also never revealed to be an honored one type character. He was revealed as the god of lightning, but in his introduction in chapter 158, we can just see him changing the rules in the Culling Games. We didn't really see this big bombastic introduction that you would think someone who is in the conversation of the strongest along with Gojo and Sukuna would have. Sukuna was revealed to be the disgraced one and Gojo is revealed to be the honored one, but Kashimo never had a significant title like that. So even though he was the strongest in his era, it doesn't mean he would have been the strongest in Gojo's or Sukuna's era. Hankari defeated Kashimo in chapter 190, where Kashimo thought he won the fight, so even in this modern era, he's not the strongest. He's just another powerful JiuJitsu sorcerer. So long story short, Kashimo never held that title as the honored one, even back in his day. He was labeled the strongest in his era, but never the honored or a disgraced one, or any special title of that nature. And now with Gojo dying, who is the next honored one? In a video I released last year, I talked about how Yuji is the third honored one. At that time and in the video, I mentioned how I believed Sukuna was the original honored one and Gojo being the second honored one, with Yuji finally entering the conversation as one of the strongest in a new era of JiuJitsu sorcerers, with him being the honored one in that era. However, even though I originally believed that Sukuna was the original honored one, in all honesty, he is the first of a line of JiuJitsu sorcerers who will be labeled as the disgraced ones. Characters like Geto and Mahito fit that mold in them, being part of an all-inclusive disgraced one character club. They're not officially labeled as the disgraced ones in the story, but the whole storyline of a JiuJitsu sorcerer falling into darkness and being a villain to mankind falls into the description of the disgraced one, as Sukuna himself was a JiuJitsu sorcerer who became a cursed spirit. Geto was also a JiuJitsu sorcerer who cared for people, but then saw the evil of humanity and it changed him, calling them monkeys. Mahito claims that he was a human, but we don't really know much about him. But he is absolutely insane. The guy is blasphemous and is just as evil as Sukuna. So just with that alone, he deserves to be called a disgraced one. Okay, so we have a rough idea on who the disgraced ones are. But who is the next honored one? Is it Yuji? Is it Hakari? Or is it someone else? From the way the story has been written and set out, I feel that Yuji will not be the next honored one. He may end up being as strong as an honored one level character, but I feel Yuji will not have his own title, and ironically, I feel his title will be called the Fallen One. Depending on how the story ends, I feel this will be Yuji's title, because I feel Yuji will either die and sacrifice himself to defeat Sukuna, he has to fall in order to defeat Sukuna, or Yuji will fall into despair with him being the only one left alive, transforming himself into a cursed spirit and becoming the next Sukuna. Yuji falls into Sukuna's path, hence that title. Even in this scenario, if this were to happen, he will be labeled as the Fallen One. Whichever situation happens, in my opinion, Yuji will be labeled as the Fallen One, so who will be the next honored one? In my opinion, the character that will take over Gojo's mantle and be the next honored one is none other than Yuta Okkotsu. Both Yuta and Gojo have that Superman feel to them. Whenever they are on screen, you know everything is going to be okay. Both of these characters come in and save the day, and it has been mentioned that after Gojo, Yuta is the second strongest amongst our heroes? In the first 7 arcs where Gojo was a prominent figure, Yuta was nowhere to be seen, but he's always being mentioned as one of the second-year students and being one of the strongest. But during those arcs, Gojo can always make the save whenever the Jujutsu sorcerers needed saving, such as in the Goodwill event arc. We all remember episode 20 of season 1 where Gojo unleashed Hollow Purple. He had characters like Hanami running. Hanami even said to Todo and Yuji that he's not arrogant enough to fight Gojo Satoru. Gojo was that guy to make that last-minute save at that time when Yuta was away. However, when Gojo got sealed up in the prison realm, the very next arc, the Itadori's extermination arc, Yuta returns to the story. Ironic, isn't it? When Gojo gets sealed away, the very next arc, we see Yuta return to the story. And when he does reveal himself to Yuji, Chozo and Naoya, not only were all 3 of them intimidated and shook by his power, Yuji himself mistaken Yuta for Gojo, but Yuta's power was quote-unquote a creepier energy, as mentioned by Yuji in chapter 139. So the story itself not only had Yuta coming back and replacing Gojo's place as the strongest from the hero side, but our heroes themselves and even our main character thought Yuta was Gojo just by sensing his cursed energy. That is not by accident, and what we have seen Akutami do with overpowered characters like Sukuna and Gojo is that he will make a scenario for his overpowered characters to show off their abilities and completely overpower whoever they were up against. With Gojo we had Jogo back in season 1, and with Sukuna we had the cursed room back in episode 4 of season 1. As soon as he reintroduces these characters, he reminds the audience how overpowered they are and the levels characters like Yuji, Megumi and Nobara have to reach. When Yuta reappeared in the story in the Itadori's extermination arc, Yuta only showcased a small portion of his abilities against Yuji, and yet his very presence intimidated the likes of Naoya and Chozo. He displayed the full extent of his powers during the Culling Games, where Yuta was matched up against one of the strongest players the deadly Battle Royale had to offer. He effortlessly dispatched Dravlaktawala, a reincarnated sorcerer who once conquered Japan, single-handedly shattering the 4-way deadlock in the Sendai colony. Yuta likely could have also made short work of Kurorushi if he had chosen to use reverse curse technique from the beginning. However, Yuta handicapped himself to avoid displaying his abilities to those observing him, and he still managed to overpower the cockroach curse in multiple exchanges, as we see in chapter 175. So when it comes to showcasing how super overpowered Yuta is, Akutami has done it during the Culling Games. Both Gojo and Yuta will protect the weak, as we see in chapter 174, with Yuta protecting the innocent civilians in the stadium, as well as himself and Rika protecting them against Kurorushi. Gojo, we have seen him protect the innocent civilians in Shibuya, killing at least 1,000 transfigured humans in 299 seconds. He could have gone after the 4 disaster curses, but instead he chose to kill the transfigured humans and protect the innocent civilians. Both Yuta and Gojo are heroes, but both also will not hesitate to kill if they have to. Hell, both of them killed the same human being, with Gojo killing Geto to begin with, and then Yuta killing Kenjaku, who is in control of Geto's body back in chapter 243. Gojo's big major kill that impacted him going forward was Toji, and now that Yuta has seemed to have killed Kenjaku, we will see how this impacts his character and if it transcends him into the next honored one. Kenjaku mentioned that his will be carried on at the end of chapter 243. We don't know who he will be carried by, but if Kenjaku's will can be carried on, why can't Gojo's will be carried on as well? Gojo's will is the will of the Honored One. The Honored One can be referred as someone who is enlightened. Someone who is enlightened in the Cambridge Dictionary, it defines them as showing understanding, acting in a positive way, and not following old-fashioned or false beliefs, which is the definition of both Gojo and Yuta's characters, as both characters go out of their way to save the innocent civilians, showing off their positive actions. They're both mentor figures to our main character Yuji, showing great understanding in not only cursed energy, but just life experience in general, as Yuta himself has been in the same scenario where Yuji is right now, in which the higher-ups wanted him dead. And the third definition from the Cambridge Dictionary of enlightenment is not following old-fashioned or false beliefs. Well, Gojo is that, as he wanted to also reshape the Jiu-Jitsu world instead of it being run by the higher-ups. And in a way, Yuta using Rika as a special grade curse, who is nicknamed as the Queen of Curses, he is using Rika in a way that actually benefits the Jiu-Jitsu world and society. Him just existing is reshaping the belief of the jiu-jitsu world. He is using Rika to save the world and innocent civilians. Just go back and read chapter 174 and see the way he uses Rika as a shield for the innocent civilians. A cursed spirit saving people, that is massive. But a special grade curse doing it? That's unheard of. It's like having one of the 4 disaster curses, or even Sukuna himself saving innocent people. You can never imagine that happening, but the fact that Yuta is doing this, and along with being a special grade sorcerer himself, Gojo's dream of reshaping the jiu-jitsu world will happen with Yuta being the lead and showing everyone that it is possible to have peace between the cursed spirits and the human beings. He can be the guy that will lead to a new dawn in the world of jiu-jitsu. Only an honored one type of character can achieve such a goal, which I feel Yuta will end up being. Yuji will be the fallen one, either sacrificing himself to get rid of Sukuna or literally falling into darkness and becoming the next Sukuna. And Yuta will be the next honored one, changing the world of not only jiu-jitsu but the world of non-sorcerers as well. With the spoilers from the latest chapter, we see the beginning of Yuta versus Sukuna. This could be another battle between an honored one character versus the disgraced one. Yuta's journey of becoming the next honored one can be defined in this fight. Thank you for watching this video. Please comment below if you think Yuta will end up taking Gojo's mantle and becoming the next honored one, or if you think another character will end up becoming the next honored one. I'm looking forward to seeing your comments, and as I always say, don't forget to subscribe to the Shaman Try.